Hello and welcome to the Game Changers podcast, where you'll hear from extraordinary, fearless women in sport. I'm Sue Anstis, and in this episode it's Dame Katherine Grainger, Team GB's most decorated Olympian. With 5 rowing medals, including that emotional gold from London 2012, Katherine now sits as the hugely respected chair of UK sport. As you can imagine, especially as we enter this incredible summer of sport in the UK, Katherine's a super busy woman. So I was thrilled that she made the time to meet with me at the UK sport offices in London. I began by taking her back to her childhood in Glasgow and asking about her earliest memories of sport.
I lived in this really lovely little neighbourhood. So I have a big sister who is the year older than me at school, so I mainly tagged on with her. And we had the sort of back street behind our house was a dead end, so we had loads of kids our age who just lived in the same little street. So after school every day, everyone was out there running, playing football, I don't know, hide and seek, rounders, anything. We just were always outside and active. And then at school, we again had the school was really close to me, and we also had a sort of sports centre not far to walk to, and my sister and I were always sort of taken to swimming classes or badminton things, or we were always doing some stuff. So I just remember sport just being part of my life from a really early time.
And do you think you had a competitive edge from the start, or was it just enjoying sport for sport then?
I pretend I didn't have a competitive edge, but my parents always put me right on this. And I think I saw my sister as a natural competitor to me. So she was a bit bigger and a bit older and a bit better at everything. So she was quite an easy person for me to try and compete against in everything we did. And she would, start a club or a class or something at school, and I would kind of go along as a younger sister. And so I kind of, in a way, got into things a year earlier than I might have otherwise. So that kind of was a really nice start in doing things and trying to learn and compete at the same level as my big sister.
And you did karate as a schoolgirl. And when did you get your black belt? How old were you when you got that?
I would have got that just before my 17th birthday. Absolutely loved it. That was at secondary school, and we had a brilliant art teacher who in lunchtime, a couple of times a week at spare lunchtime, would take karate classes. And just did it because he was a very, very senior black belt and loved it, and had evening classes with sort of more grown-ups, and during the day sort of did lunchtime classes with the kids at school. And again, I started because my big sister started first. And
did she get her black belt?
She never did, because she was a brilliant athlete, but she got quite bad damage to her knees quite early.
Right.
So stopped doing it. And then I continued, and I went from I was the first sort of pupil Mr. Davis had who went from white belt to black belt while at school. So yeah, it was good for both of us.
And I've heard you comment in terms of all the things that you learned from sport as a young person. So do you think some of what you learnt within the martial arts element of sport has stayed with you through your sporting career? Yeah,
I still, there's part of me that still, wishes I'd time to do more martial arts. It was an incredible sport to fall into at a reasonably young age. It's got this brilliant sort of discipline to it and respect, and very, very good for flexibility and coordination of body and all the sort of things you learn instinctively because you're trying to do something else through sport, but you're picking all those skills up. But it has this real sort of discipline to it, which I think is brilliant for young people. And when I moved into my other sports after that, it was a huge sort of incredible grounding basis to then build everything else on, because my body was really, really knew what to do. Yeah, it was amazing.
And I know we talk a lot about role models and the female sporting role models. Who were your, not necessarily sports, but your role models growing up?
I think now we always put role models as these huge big figures on the big global stage, but when I was growing up, it was my big sister, it was the teachers. All my PE teachers were female, and they were amazing. And actually, as I've got older and you look back, and we probably never gave them the kind of recognition they deserved at the time for their level of engagement and extra time they're putting in around classes. And I think teaching is such a hard profession, and you've got tired pupils who aren't always willing to get out there and get muddy in the fields and things. And I had some really special teachers who just had that energy and passion for what they taught, and I think that's quite infectious.
I'm thinking I might need to do a new series of podcasts with the game changers that are PE teachers, 'cause I hear so much from people that we talk to. It is those PE teachers that get them started on that journey.
Yeah, and I think you're often, when I speak to people now, grown-ups, about sport, how they feel about it, and some love it and some hate it and some have a very strange relationship with it, it often goes back to school. So if you've had a really good influence at school, you hold on to that love of sport all your life. If you've had a bad relationship at school, then you it takes a long time to ever want to get past that. So I think teachers, and I think that's across all subjects, I'm a massive fan of teachers generally. I think they do recognise and ignite passion in people and see potential. And I think a lot of time, I didn't have massive confidence as a kid at school, and when teachers believe in you and see stuff in you, then it really helps. So I think certainly growing up, they were kind of my role models.
And were there sporting, can you think back across your teenage years, were there athletes or female athletes that you were aware of, that you'd seen on television or performing, that you...
Yeah, I suppose, I was trying to think when I first was kind of aware of the Olympics and stuff, and, it was the people like Sally Gunnell and I suppose, Jane Turville with Turville and Dean. It's the big moments of sort of iconic sort of sporting celebration that kind of stays in your memory. And I think it's lovely because as I've started to work in sport, you get to meet some of those heroes, and it's incredible. It's incredible when I spent an amazing time with Mary Peters at Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, and seeing some of the footage when she won her Olympic gold, and just the joy that she had in sort of winning in sport, it's amazing. I think we're very lucky to have this incredible history of great women.
Absolutely. And then on to rowing. I guess you didn't start rowing until you were 17 and at university. What was it that made you first get into the water at university? On the water, not in the water.
Definitely didn't want to get in the water. Just chance. I was at the university kind of, sports fair during Freshers Week, where it is all about joining new clubs and trying new things. And I had some, great advice before I went, just saying, try and do as much as you can. Even things you don't know or you don't like or you don't know if you'll be good at, just try stuff. And I was actually with another friend who wanted to go and speak to the rowing club, and I didn't. And I had an incredibly impressive, quite an older student who was working at the university stall, who kept coming over and kept sort of saying to me, you should come along, you'd love this sport, you should get involved. And I think she tried 3 times before I grudgingly took the information and went along for the first meeting, and still didn't think I would necessarily do it as a sport, or didn't really feel drawn to it naturally. But went to the first meeting and went to the first few sort of sessions to try. And before I fell in love with the sport, I absolutely fell in love with the people I did it with.
Right.
They were just incredible women who, all sort of first-year students or second-year students who were just brilliant characters. Some of my best friends to this day who are just, were driven and competitive, but fun and engaging and dynamic and all quirky and just a joy to spend time with. And that environment was what hooked me long before the sport did.
Water. But when you did get on the water, did you feel like it was the right thing for you quite instantaneously, or no?
No, it's not like this moment of epiphany when I sat in a boat and thought this is my future.
Okay.
No, and I didn't, because of the stuff I'd done at school, I was, physically, a good potential athlete, but I had no technique to speak of, and it took me a good couple of years to really learn the craft well enough.
That is one of the things I've heard about rowing that's such a positive leveller, almost. I think someone equated it to the learning a musical instrument, or we all come to it and we all can't do it to begin with. So rowing isn't something that you sit in a boat and immediately you're balanced in a way.
It's not, to me, it wasn't an instinctively natural sort of movement. I mean, now it really is. Now it's so obvious to me, and it's just, I do it without thinking. But when you first got in, it is incredibly technical, and it doesn't look it. It looks like a very simple movement repeated over and over and over again. But there's so many different sort of parts to it, and you are coordinating your whole body at the same time, doing slightly different things, left and right and front and back. And yeah, I found it really quite tricky. But yeah, I guess I loved learning it. It is an absolute craft to try and learn, and I even when I did it for 20 years internationally, I was still, to the very last day I competed at the Olympic Games, still trying to learn that craft.
Yeah, interesting. A bit of a meteoric rise through those 4 years that by the end of your university time, you were representing your country. Did it feel like it was super fast as you experienced it, or was it just a natural progression through?
No, even in those 4 years, I kind of talk about my whole career, and every athlete will. It's a bit of a roller coaster. You've got amazing highs and lows. But even those 4 years was exactly the same. I had a great first year as a novice, because you're just novice athletes thrown in together and you can get by, and not much skill and talent, and we did. And then in my second year, I went into the senior team, and that's a very different ball game. And there were some very, very good athletes in that senior team. And I was right at the bottom of it. I really wasn't showing great potential there. It took some great sort of volunteer coaches and also some of the older students to help me to sort of achieve potential. So I had a very tough, by second year, of that dawning realisation that it's not going to come naturally. It's going to take a lot of work to get this sport right. And then by the end of my third year, I rode for Scotland, and then at the end of my fourth year, I went forward to the British trials. So third and fourth year went quickly, but it wasn't a kind of from day one. This is bound to be my future.
And that's an important message, isn't it? I've got 3 daughters who've all rode a little bit, but that whole hoping to master it so quickly, but actually recognising it is about persistence and time and ups and downs and so on. I think sometimes there is that desire to get in and crack it straight off.
Yeah, and I think we all want that instant gratification thing, and the one of the lovely things about sport and rowing's one of the good examples is that it is, the key to it is really resilience and persistence, and the kind of the good days are good, but then the next day won't be as good, and because it is this sort of, there's a real art and craft to it. It's very subtleties to the stroke and the movement. So you will take a lifetime to really perfect it, and that's one of the massive attractions now. But at the time, it can be frustrating. But actually, every single person will say the same. It's the reward is in the sort of trying to get that right in itself.
And it seemed there's a few students, I know Anna and others, who went to university and then found rowing at university. Is that still possible today? Do you think that someone attending university this autumn could end up on an Olympic team in the future in rowing, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sport, because it's got a massive sort of power endurance base, it means that you will develop it almost, you can develop that base through most of your life. So a lot of people come to it from other sports, a lot of people with swimming backgrounds or rugby backgrounds, I came from martial arts, who have natural physiques and natural sort of talents in sport will be able to move into rowing quite easily in their late teens. So it's definitely not a stopper.
Thought, isn't it?
It's never too late. I went on to it for another couple of decades after that. So, it is a sport that you really can take your time to develop and to get right.
And obviously your sporting story is so dramatic, and I guess a real story of persistence, a journey of persistence. And I wonder if we could talk through, if we can, to start with those first 3 silver medals. I'm sure it's a story you tell many times, but tell again for us. But perhaps to start with in Sydney, and obviously in the quad at the time there, and losing just by 1 second. But perhaps talk us through.
Sydney was a complete success. Sydney wasn't losing anything. Sydney was, we in the whole women's team in the history of British rowing never won any medals at the Olympic Games. So Sydney was all about, could we get onto the podium? And we had a really strong team, but it's hard when you're trying to do something that's never been done. There's no sort of natural pathway. There's no really guidance. We had incredible role models in the men's team. Steve Redgrave was still competing, and Matthew Pinsent, and there's a big focus on sort of rowing because of Steve going for his 5th gold medal, and we got to race the next day, and we were in the final. There's 6 boats in the final, but we knew we wanted to be one of the top 3. And to be honest, at that point, a medal, any colour of medal, was as good as any of the other colours. It wasn't that it was just getting on the podium was crucial, and we did, and I was convinced we'd won the bronze medal when we crossed the line, because it was a photo finish between bronze and silver. So we won the silver by 800ths of a second, which was tiny margins, but just getting on that podium, it was the joy we had on that day. If someone had come and given us the gold on top, no one could have been happier. We're already full to capacity of that silver medal, and all the photos of that day is beautiful. It's beautiful Australian sunshine, and it's just fabulous medal and ceremony, and it was the first. It was the breakthrough medal, and the brilliant sort of thing that created was this belief that it was possible in the whole team. Suddenly it had been done. It wasn't a what if and maybe one day. It was a kind of reality now that British women could win the medals in this sport. So we saw a real change in sort of drive and focus, and also it all coincided with the wasn't a coincidence at all, with the investment from the National Lottery, and suddenly athletes could train full time and could have access to great facilities, and we got a coach for the women's team, and all these things sort of came in that suddenly you could take the sport very seriously and have realistic ambitions of Olympic Games, not just getting there but actually winning medals there. And we had a brilliant successful team in Athens, where Sydney was the first medal of any colour. Suddenly we had 3 medals in Athens from the women's team, and every boat that went came back with a medal, and that was just unheard of. So the momentum really just kept building right the way through to Beijing. And the silver medal in Athens for me was a huge achievement, because actually it was the first. We had I was in a different boat then, we had some really rocky times leading up to it. So
you're in a pair there with Kath.
I was in a pair with Kath Bishop, and we won the World Championships the year before. That was our first world title, but I had an injury that year, and we had sort of massive challenges along the way, and you suddenly realise, how many, just because you have achieved in the past, it doesn't then make it easier. You will always meet more and more obstacles, and what you get better at is overcoming them. And so the silver medal in Athens is one I'm sort of really personally very, very proud of, both Kath and I. But it was a second silver, so it didn't have the pure surprise and joy of Sydney, but it was still a fabulous result. And whereas you go on 4 more years to Beijing, and by then we really felt we were getting consistent results, and I was back into a quad, and we'd won 3 world titles back to back. So we really were getting familiar with winning and repeated winning. So you kind of get some brilliant habits get built in, and you kind of get the confidence building, and everything falls into place. And it really felt that Beijing would be the first time we'd have a very realistic chance of winning the Olympic Games, and which hadn't been done before in rowing. And it kind of, you want everyone to be fit and well and healthy and in the right mindset, and we had all that. And that was the hardest, final of all the ones I've done, in that we did lead the Olympic field for a long, long way, and then we just got beaten by the Chinese in the dying moments, and that one was just completely devastating because of the expectation and our own expectations as much as everyone else's. And there's a real sense of loss, and I mean, disappointment doesn't do it justice. We all felt we'd let everyone and everything down. You're part of a massive team by then. You're not just the British team, you're the Olympic team, and the nation's watching and hoping and expecting, and you feel we had it in our hands and we let it go. And it was really hard to come to terms with that result, and the sort of the medal that day just felt like evidence of failure, rather than it felt like we'd lost something rather than won anything. And that's a horrible, horrible way to sort of be on the podium, coming to terms with that moment.
I watched that video again this weekend. I mean, with my daughters too. It's just devastating, to see the distress there. But not everybody had been to previous games, is there? So I guess for some of them that was their first Olympic medal. But yeah, as a unit, it still felt so distressing that you hadn't achieved gold.
Yeah, for 3 of us, it was our 3rd Olympic Games, so we'd had different experiences across those games. For Annie, who was in the boat, she'd just come into the boat sort of quite recently before that. So she'd had great success with us, which we were part of that World Championship winning cruise, so she'd had a great time leading up to it. And this is her first Olympic Games, and I know my first Olympic Games Sydney experience couldn't have been better. I was, it was utter joy, like I said, standing on the Sydney podium, and you absolutely want that for everyone who goes, especially the first time, because it is such an incredible achievement to get to Olympic Games, never mind medal at your first Olympic Games. And my biggest regret from that whole sort of Olympic regatta was the result for Annie, probably of all people, because she deserved, she was a world champion, she deserved to be a very proud Olympic silver medalist, and she was standing next to us in floods of tears as well, but with disappointment, because she knew as much as we all did that we felt we could have won that if we'd got it absolutely right. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one for the others who'd been sort of through our ups and downs, sort of had earned the hard way how good a medal can be and how disappointing. And you felt Annie, for the first time, should have just seen the joy of a medal, and it was a shame she didn't.
And you've talked, I know, of a long time of almost overcoming that disappointment. Any advice to athletes facing that loss and disappointment when it is just a second, or reliving that moment and thinking what could have been? How have you learnt to deal and cope with that?
I mean, it's like other huge disappointments in life. There's no quick fix. It helps if you've got the right people around you. You know, I had brilliant family, I've got brilliant friends who were incredibly supportive. Now, none of them could fix it and none of them made it okay, but they were there. And so I didn't feel completely alone. And also, it just takes time.
Yeah, like grief. It is like grief.
It is,
Yeah.
and it will catch you out when you least expect it. And I thought I was fine some days, and suddenly it would catch me out of nowhere, or someone would make a comment that I hadn't expected, and you know, it just felt very, very raw for a very long time. And it is just one of those things of growing up. You just, you know it. It's the patient's game of. Ultimately, you will be okay and you'll be fine, but you have to go through the harder days. And you know, I'd certainly say I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I ultimately was better for having had that experience and surviving it.
In that moment, it's hard to know that, but
you don't. And I wouldn't say to anyone who's going through that sort of disappointment or grief that, oh, don't worry, you'll be better for it, because it's not. You don't understand that at the time. It's not what you want to hear. It's not helpful, but ultimately, you are better for it. We're all, you know, I think the one amazing thing about all humans is this incredible sort of survival ability of. You find a way to get through, and you take it one day at a time, and ultimately you are stronger having dealt with those big emotional experiences. So
on then to the more positive, I guess that next stage of to London at Dorney and a home crowd with Anna. What's always fascinated me a bit about that is that fabulous partnership that you had with her, like a true partnership. And so I guess in the morning you're at Oakley Court, quite close to where I live in the morning. So I guess what was that preparation ahead of that? Did that feel any different to previous games in terms of the waking up that morning?
Yeah, and partly we had 3 years rowing together. You know, we won absolutely everything we've ever done together. So that gives you incredible confidence in the boat, but also trust in each other. We loved each other's company on and off the water. I absolutely knew she was the best person in the world to have in the boat on that day, and she felt the same. And it's, you know, we knew each other so well that we didn't, you know, we spoke all the time, but you know, a lot didn't need to be said through words. And you know, there is that moment the alarm goes off, and you don't need to, you don't need the alarm because you're already awake, to be honest. But you don't need to be reminded of what that day is. We've talked about that day for a long, long time, and it was finally the 3rd of August, and the alarm goes off, and you realise this is it. And there is that moment that you will go through, you know, that day you will now share together, that whatever happens, whether it's the result you want or not, you will be forever, you know, bonded by that this one day we would share. And I think ultimately for both of us, we just felt it was such a privilege and such an opportunity that we had. We were in the best boat we could imagine. We were in front of a home crowd, and in a summer of sport that, you know, lasted through the Olympics onto the Paralympics, where you felt the whole nation were just, you know, thrilled by it and excited and warmed by it and inspired. And you know, there was a lovely, I don't know, positivity to the whole country. There was a real sense of, you know, anything's possible and everyone wanted to be part of something together. You know, it was an incredible united sort of sensation throughout everywhere I went. And, you know, in the middle of all this incredible sort of all the bells and whistles and that the Olympic Games can bring to a city and a nation, you know, at the heart of it, it's just, you know, ordinary people trying to do the best job they can in the sports that they love. And you know, we got to Dorney Lake, and Lake we'd trained at loads and loads and loads of times, but this was kind of always going to be different, the race of your Olympic final. And I think we felt ready. I think we felt, you always think, oh, I could do this another day or another couple of days, but ultimately we believed we had everything we needed between the two of us and our work with our coach Paul. And there wasn't, you know, we didn't need to say a lot, but the words we had were just incredibly honest. You know, when you have that amazing partnership, you can be incredibly honest and truthful with each other. And I think we just looked forward to it. I think that was one thing. There were still nerves, but there was no dread. There was kind of, you know, really want to get going on this one and deliver a result we think we can.
And did that feel different to previous games in terms of waking up and going in that morning? Did you feel calmer or more
They all
excited
feel
for
different.
it?
To be honest, they all feel different. You're at different stage, different age, different experience, different knowledge.
People with you. And,
exactly, and everything. It should always feel different. But yeah, that one probably. You can never, ever, ever be certain about any sort of major race, but that one felt the most. Kind of just, we felt we had an incredible ownership of that event partly because it was the home games as well. This is, we felt this is our lake, this is our crowd, this is our grounds, everything's coming into play for us, and we can own this one. And so there was probably a much more, just can't wait to get started on this one. This one's ours, ready for the taking.
Amazing. And I guess just that joy, as you've talked before, of all that had gone before in that moment of winning gold.
Yeah, and it is, every single athlete will have had a journey to get to any Olympic start line. And I think, for me it was really important not to feel the kind of weight of history or any burden at the start line. You want to feel, it's only about that moment. You're not.
First stroke.
Yeah, it's just one stroke at a time, and it's just what you need to do. And I don't need to go over my history to know what I was bringing to that start line. But it was, it's almost afterwards. It's almost, once you cross the line and you're on the podium, and it all floods through you. Your whole, all these kind of moments that they've got on all the amazing people I'd rode with from those university days through to the previous 3 Olympics, to all the coaches and all the support staff that had been there, and loads of those people were in the crowds. So when Anna and I did this sort of row past afterwards with our medals, oh my God, all the thousands and thousands of faces, and we seemed to know most of them. And there was almost that was a this is your life moment of all these people from both our histories were there for that moment, and it just it did. Oh, it was incredible, and everyone was cheering and singing and taking photos and waving, and you could share this incredible moment with so many people, and that's why to have that moment happen at home games is just the gift. It really is the ultimate gift.
And then obviously you took a little while to deliberate whether you would then continue on to Rio, and I guess looking back from a logical point of view, it would seem that you would have finished with London. What do you think it was the final point that made you decide you wanted to continue on to Rio?
Yeah, I did take a gap because I wasn't sure. And I think everyone just assumed that would be it. You finally achieved what you've always wanted. So, and it was the fairy tale moment in front of that crowd. So why would you ever go on beyond that? And
why risk it almost? And
a lot of people did say, a lot of people warned me of that. Why risk? At the moment you've got an incredible story, you've got an incredible journey, there's a bit of a legacy you could leave behind, and if you go on and you fail in some way, then that would be the end of the story, and that will sort of spoil the journey.
Wasn't guaranteed, you weren't guaranteed.
Nothing was guaranteed. Nothing's ever guaranteed. No. Even coming back wasn't guaranteed. You're up against the likelihood of injury, of not reclaiming form. I knew Anna had retired, so I'd have forged another new partnership, another new boat. And meanwhile, the whole world's moved on while you've not been there. And so there's a lot of risks to it. But I suppose, I don't know, you're either the kind of person that sees all that and sees all the risks and the negatives and thinks, it's not worth it, I'm not going to try, I've got other things I could do with my life. And I did, and I was excited about other options. Or you look at all that and go, I know, but I'd still rather find out if I could do it. I'd rather take that risk because it's something I love, and I still loved it, and I still wanted the challenge. And I remember when I did it, and there was a couple of articles written kind of basically questioning why I'd come back, and certainly implying, if not stating directly, that it was a mistake. And Anna sent me a really lovely message just saying, I'm so proud of you for not living life as if it is a sort of written fairy tale with an answer. You actually, you want to still ask questions of yourself and keep challenging, and that's actually, to her, that was much more than just trying to complete the perfect story.
It's almost the more powerful story, isn't it? That is in terms of a lesson for people to go and explore and continue.
Yeah, and you can get to a point where you think, I'd rather just leave it there and walk away. And it is safe, it feels safer. But I don't know, you've got one life, and I don't always want to play safe. And I still had a real love for it. And I spoke to the great medics we work with and the coaches as well to say, realistically, if this still something I should consider, and they were all incredibly supportive. I think it won't be easy, but very positive about it. So
another silver.
Yeah, and Rio was great. Rio was, very, very tough 2 years coming back in, mentally and physically. And there was very points through that 2 years where I thought, and many others thought, it just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to be possible. I was in a different boat, and a few different boats in the final year were sort of looked at, and I ended up back in the double, which I'd been in London, but with Vicky Thornley, who was another fabulous athlete, and we didn't physically, we're quite different, so we didn't naturally have the fit that Anna and I had from day one, so it took a lot more sort of to get it right. And we were selected very late and very last minute, and coming into it, we hadn't won any races together, whereas Anna and I, like I said, had won everything. Yeah, we hadn't. So we didn't have that kind of sort of security or confidence or reassurance. We both really got on, and we really believed it was possible. But there was and our coach was probably at points much more believing than us that it would work. He really saw that it could work, but you don't have the evidence, and then it feels, as that uncertainty can cause doubt. So early on, that when the results aren't coming, there's always this kind of, God, well, is this the right decision, and will this work out? And then Rio was so complicated, and the weather conditions changed, and things got postponed and cancelled and delayed, and that adds into the mix. And then the racing was, some of the favourites didn't make it to the final, so it's suddenly this kind of reminder that actually nothing is certain. There was some really surprising results, but when you're one of the outsiders and the non-favourites, then actually when things are going uncertain, then it plays into your hands a little bit, because you think, well, actually now everyone's uncertain, and what have we got to lose? And that final was all about that kind of, what have you got to lose? It was throwing everything to win. The odds were absolutely against us. No one would have put money on us, and you've got 2,000 metres to see what you can do. So it was it was my most sort of probably shock result of them all, the final one.
Fantastic. And then moving forward to 2017, and appointed chair at UK Sport. So I guess clearly a massive honour. And what did that mean to you personally, having, I guess, lived within that world of performance sport to then take that role?
Yeah, well, it wasn't an obvious step for me, to be honest. And I thought for a while I might move away from sport and do something else and just get a change in life, and sort of focus. And then this job opened up, and I still didn't think it was anything that I could realistically consider. But I put an application in, and then I got asked to go for an interview, and really enjoyed the whole process. It was the first real job I'd actually applied for and gone through. So I didn't think, and I think you've got a bit of freedom if you think realistically it's probably not going to happen. So that gives you a bit of freedom in interview and things. And I just enjoyed, and just you're not so much pressure on yourself. And I just enjoyed the process. And then they phoned back, and it's the Minister of Sport phoned you back and offered you the role. And I was absolutely terrified, if I'm honest. I didn't really know what it would be like, or what it might involve, or it's a big chunky role to take on, and in a very big organisation that does incredibly important things within high performance sport. But I think I wanted, you can't have had 20 years in high performance sport and not still want to, push yourself and challenge and learn and develop, and I was kind of hungry to keep doing that, but in a different way than I had as an athlete. And I'm so glad every single day. I'm so glad I took the job, because it is hard and it does challenge me daily, and I have learned so much in 2 years. But I adore it, and I love the people I work with. And I love their passion for what they do and their belief in it. And they've everyone's got such integrity of trying to do the right thing in a very tough environment where you don't have enough answers for everyone who needs them, and you're trying to help guide and steer the way forward for British sport, and that's incredible privilege, and everyone feels that as a responsibility in the right way. And I love working with Liz Nicholl, who's been the chief exec here for a long time, and she as a sort of female leader in sport is just really quite exceptional about her length of career and what she's achieved in that time and the influence she's had, and yet is one of the most humble, modest people you'll meet, incredibly down to earth, so engaging, so much fun to spend days with, and just at the heart of things believes in doing the right thing. And that is an incredible simple way to be, but you think at this level, and there's so many competing challenges to you, just to have that clarity of thought at the heart of it, it's about doing the right thing. Absolutely. Keeps her so grounded, and I've learnt masses from her in the 2 years I've worked with her, and she's been completely inspirational of what I've managed to do myself. And from day one, I said, look, I'm not going to be the most experienced chair you've ever dealt with. I'll be the least experienced by a long way. And she said, well, we're going to make you into the best chair you can be. And that's the opportunity you have, and we'll look forward to doing that. And she has done that. And that is just being in this work environment, working with fabulous women at this level is just such a privilege.
That's brilliant. Lovely to hear. And recently you announced a new future strategy for UK Sport. And I guess some of the media headlines seem to hook on to the piece about wanting to be at the top of the medals tables. But I think looking further down, it's much more around social inclusion and how we can utilise sport, and that's clearly something you're very passionate about.
Yes, the future strategy itself, and sport strategy, never mentioned, number one, the medal table or those things. What we were asked later was what might be possible if more money would come in. What could be possible? What would it take to top the medal table? So we can do that. We can actually number crunch and work that out. And of course, it makes great headlines. And it would be number one on the medal table. Would be something this country has never done. So it would be exciting. But that's a much longer term strategy. But no, the strategy we've just launched was sort of from post-Tokyo, so after 2021. It came off the back of a huge public consultation that got great engagement actually from the public, as well as working groups with people from inside sport, from who work alongside sport, different stakeholders, all different parts of the 4 home nations. And the general response from everyone was, we still love the success that the Olympics and Paralympics brings. We still want to see those brilliant, iconic, inspirational moments. But could it be even more? Could it be, more sports and more athletes with more impact in society? Because, people generally get that sport has its inspiration, and that reaches far beyond just getting people to do more sport. It's about people being able to do anything in life and just feel that, these great stories you see of athletes, they've all come from very different backgrounds. They've all had different sort of abilities growing up. They've all had different challenges, and they've all overcome things to achieve something that's been their dream, their passion. And there's something that's incredibly human about that. There's something that's very, that's very relatable, is that, people all have their secrets, ambitions and dreams, and some of it will be in all different directions and different genres and different levels, but people should have that, deep in your heart. What do you really want to do with life? And sport has amazing lessons of, how you can achieve stuff to achieve those dreams. And I think that sort of level of inspiration, if it can be spread far and wide through sport, then that's an incredible gift to give.
And recently, Baroness Grey-Thompson's review in terms of athlete welfare has highlighted a few concerns with a bit of a culture of bullying in some sports. And I think you've been quite open in terms of the toughness of coaches in your training and development. So I guess personally to you, do you feel you would have had the success you'd had if you hadn't had that level of intense coaching? Could a different coach have brought as much out in you, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, different coaches, different styles, and you never quite, you never know what might have happened with different styles. I've always said, I think there have been some individuals within some sports that haven't had a healthy attitude to how they've driven athletes and driven environments. But ultimately, you need there to be a positive environment for people to really flourish. People do need to feel safe and looked after, but it will always feel tough. It will always feel, at some extent, it's hard what we do. Being a high performance athlete, it's not, you are physically exhausted and you're mentally tired, and that's why you need the support around you to achieve what you need to achieve. But it will not be, I don't think anyone I've ever met would want it to be, lightness and joy and every day is an easy day, because you're trying to do something quite exceptional.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to be pushed. But I think we all know, the lines are blurred, and it's hard to draw a clear line of what's acceptable, what's not. But I think instinctively you sort of, when you're being pushed, and you might not like it, but it is the right thing to get pushed. And I've definitely had performances brought out of me because, you get driven hard and you realise actually you're capable of more than you expected yourself, and that's brilliant. But where you see it go wrong is when people are pushed hard and it's actually not in a healthy way, and it's not necessarily trying to get the best out of someone. It's just pushing someone too far. Because ultimately, athletes are we're all human beings, and we all have amazing stress. But people are very vulnerable too, and it can feel quite a vulnerable environment when you're kind of pushed to exhaustion. And if you don't feel you have the right kind of people to go to and talk about and share with and things, then if people don't have the right outlets, then it can become risky. So I think what's been great is, since Tanya's report has come out, is so much has changed for the better and the positive, and it it doesn't mean it's not as good as it should be, and I think everyone's still trying to get it as good as it can be. But I think with the right people, with the right education as well, a lot of it's just sort of that teaching people of how you can push people and how you get the best out of people. And there's lots of different styles, and it's not going to be one. No, there's not one answer, but there's also sort of the education of looking out for signs of when people are really struggling, and people are asking for help that you might not have understood. So I think there's a greater understanding of of just well-being and a healthy environment that's still very possible within a hard competitive environment.
What an inspirational way to finish this first series of The Game Changers. It was such a privilege to hear from one of sport's most respected and admired athletes. Katherine epitomises the very spirit of The Game Changers as a trailblazing, extraordinary woman in sport. As I begin planning Series 2, I'd love to hear what you think about The Game Changers, so please do give us a rating or a review. I'd also like to know if there are any females in sport you'd like to hear featured in future episodes. Let me know on social media, where you'll find me at Sue Anstis. And if you want to make sure you're the first to receive all future episodes as they launch, then please subscribe to The Game Changers. And you can find out more about all the guests at promotepr.com/gamechangers. The Game Changers podcast. Fearless women in sport.